News release. Wednesday, March 22, 2023. Breakthrough findings could lead to more effective prevention and treatment strategies for multiple substance use disorders. By combing through genomic data of over 1 million people, scientists have identified genes commonly inherited across addiction disorders, regardless of the substance being used. This dataset, one of the largest of its kind, may help reveal new treatment targets across multiple substance use disorders, including for people diagnosed with more than one. The findings also reinforce the role of the dopamine system in addiction by showing that the combination of genes underlying addiction disorders was also associated with regulation of dopamine signaling. Published today in Nature Mental Health, the study was led by researchers at the Washington University in St. Louis, along with more than 150 co-authors from around the world. It was supported by the National Institute on Drug Abuse (NIDA), the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism (NIAAA), the National Institute of Mental Health (NIMH), the Eunice Kennedy Shriver National Institute of Child Health and Human Development, and the National Institute on Aging. There has been limited knowledge of the molecular genetic underpinnings of addiction until now. Further, most clinical trials and behavioral studies have focused on individual substances rather than addiction more broadly. Genetics play a key role in determining health throughout our lives, but they are not destiny. Our hope with genomic studies is to further illuminate factors that may protect or predispose a person to substance use disorders, knowledge that can be used to expand preventative services and empower individuals to make informed decisions about drug use, said NID, a director Nora Volkow, MD. A better understanding of genetics also brings us one step closer to developing personalized interventions that are tailored to an individual's unique biology, environment, and lived experience in order to provide the most benefits. In 2021, more than 46 million people in the United States aged 12 or older had at least one substance use disorder, and only 6.3% had received treatment. Moreover, people who use drugs are facing an increasingly dangerous drug supply, now often tainted with fentanyl. Approximately 107,000 people died of drug overdoses in 2021, and 37% of these deaths involved simultaneous exposure to both opioids and stimulant drugs. Drug use and addiction represent a public health crisis characterized by high social, emotional, and financial costs to families, communities, and society. Substance use disorders are heritable and influenced by complex interactions among multiple genes and environmental factors. In recent decades, a data-rich method called genome-wide association has emerged to try to identify specific genes involved in certain disorders. This method involves searching entire genomes for regions of genetic variation called single nucleotide polymorphisms (SNPs) that associate with the same disease, disorder, condition, or behavior among multiple people. In this study, researchers used this method to pinpoint areas in the genome associated with general addiction risk as well as the risk of specific substance use disorders, namely alcohol, nicotine, cannabis, and opioid use disorders in a sample of 1,025,550 individuals with genes indicating European ancestry and 92,630 individuals with genes indicating African ancestry. Using genomics, we can create a data-driven pipeline to prioritize existing medications for further study and improve chances of discovering new treatments. To do this accurately, it's critical that the genetic evidence we gather includes globally representative populations and that we have members of communities historically underrepresented in biomedical research leading and contributing to these kinds of studies, said Alexander Hatoum, Ph.D., a research assistant professor at Washington University in St. Louis and lead author of the study. Atum and the research team discovered various molecular patterns underlying addiction, including 19 independent SNP significantly associated with general addiction risk and 47 SNP for specific substance disorders among the European ancestry sample. The strongest gene signals consistent across the various disorders mapped to areas in the genome known to control regulation of dopamine signaling, suggesting that genetic variation in dopamine signaling regulation rather than in dopamine signaling itself is central to addiction risk. Compared to other genetic predictors, the genomic pattern identified here was also a more sensitive predictor of having two or more substance use disorders at once. The genomic pattern also predicted higher risk of mental and physical illness, including psychiatric disorders, suicidal behavior, respiratory disease, heart disease, and chronic pain conditions. In children aged 9 or 10 years without any experience of substance use, these genes correlated with parental substance use and externalizing behavior. Substance use disorders and mental disorders often co-occur, and we know that the most effective treatments help people address both issues at the same time. The shared genetic mechanisms between substance use and mental disorders revealed in this study underscore the importance of thinking about these disorders in tandem, said NIMH Director Joshua Gordon, MD, Ph.D. Genomic analysis in the African ancestry sample revealed one SNP associated with general addiction risk and one substance-specific SNP for risk of alcohol use disorder. The dearth of findings here underscores ongoing disparities in data inclusion of globally representative populations that must be addressed to ensure data robustness and accuracy, Hatum and co-authors note. The inclusion of data from different ancestral groups in this study cannot and should not be used to assign or categorize variable genetic risk for substance use disorder to specific populations. As genetic information is used to better understand human health and health inequities, expansive and inclusive data collection is essential. NID and other institutes at National Institute of Health supported a recently released report on responsible use and interpretation of population-level genomic data by the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. See also a corresponding statement from the National Institute of Health. While Hatum and colleagues have identified a genetic pattern indicating broad addiction risk, they note that substance use-specific diagnoses still have meaning. The current study validates previous findings of alcohol-specific risk variants and, importantly, makes this finding a very large and more diverse study population, said NIH Director George F. Coode, Ph.D. The finding of shared genetic risk variants across different substance use disorders provides insight into some of the mechanisms that underlie these disorders and the relationships with other mental health conditions. Together, the findings of alcohol-specific risk variants and common addiction-related variants provide powerful support for individualized prevention and treatment. For more information on substance and mental health treatment programs in your area, call the free and confidential national helpline 1-800-662-HELP 4-3-5-7 or visit www.findtreatment.gov. This study was supported by multiple grants and a T32D, A7261D, a 54,869, RON-D, a 54,750, K2D, a 32,573, UON-D, a 55,367, CON-D, a 51,759, D-PON-D, a 54,394, R33D, a 47,527, and ACONA, a 30,083, R21 at 27,827, Rona at 27,522, F31 at 29,934, T32 at 28,259, NIM HK23 M100 21,792, T32 MH 14,276, Roan M 120,219, NIA Arfona G 73,593, P30 G 66,614, NISH P 2C HD 042849. About the National Institute on Drug Abuse and ID is a component of the National Institutes of Health, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. NID supports most of the world's research on the health aspects of drug use and addiction. The institute carries out a large variety of programs to inform policy, improve practice, and advance addiction science. For more information about NID and its programs, visit https://nida.gov. About the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, NIAAA, the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, part of the National Institutes of Health, is the primary U.S. agency for conducting and supporting research on the causes, consequences, prevention, and treatment of alcohol use disorder. NIAA also disseminates research findings to general, professional, and academic audiences. Additional alcohol research information and publications are available at https://www.nion.gov. About the National Institute of Mental Health, NIMH, the mission of NIMH is to transform the understanding and treatment of mental illnesses through basic and clinical research, paving the way for prevention, recovery, and cure. For more information, visit https://www.nim.gov. About the National Institutes of Health, National Institute of Health. National Institute of Health, the nation's medical research agency, includes 27 institutes and centers and is a component of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. National Institute of Health is the primary federal agency conducting and supporting basic, clinical, and translational medical research and is investigating the causes, treatments, and cures for both common and rare diseases. For more information about National Institute of Health and its programs, visit www.nagov. National Institute of Health Turning Discovery into Health Registered. Hatum et al. Multivariate Genome-Wide Association meta-analysis of over 1 million subjects identifies loci underlying multiple substance use disorders. Nature Mental Health. DOI 10.1038/S44220-23-34Y2023.